Oh, yeah. Oh, 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 yeah. All right, we got Dalton Johnson joining us here in a second. If you weren't paying attention yesterday, and Bonte's going to come waltzing into the room right now, Monty Williams, who he's had a lot of tragedy in his personal life because his wife passed away in a very sad accident. He was coaching the Phoenix Suns the last couple of years, and him and DeAndre Ayton kind of got into it, and it felt like to me when I went to that Game 6 down in Phoenix, Nash, who's a good friend of mine who used to work here at the station, who diehard Phoenix Suns fan, has season tickets. Monty's gone. He's got to go. They're going to fire him, blah, blah, blah. They couldn't wait to run him out of town. The entire fan base in his section for season ticket holders couldn't wait to run him out of town. He signed $13 million a year, almost $80 million over 6 years, a new deal with the Detroit Pistons. He's James Wiseman's new coach. And that is the number one contract right now for coaches in the NBA. Popovich, number 2 at 11.5. And number 3, Golden State Warrior head coach Steve Kerr, $9.5 million. So you're looking at a guy making $4 or $5 million, almost 50% more, in Monty Williams right now. What does that mean for Steve Kerr with 1 year left on the deal?
What does it mean? What does it mean? Dalton Johnson joining us in moments here. Warriors beat writer for NBC Sports Bay Area. He was at the presser on Monday. Just looking back at the presser, where Joe Lacob, man, you listen back to it, and I love Joe Lacob's bravado. As a fan, I love that from my owner. We're going to win no matter what the rules are. Boy, there were some awkward moments. Starting with, I don't understand why he's stepping down, but that's for him to understand. It's like, I will probably not say something like that. What do you mean you don't understand, Joe? We'll ask Dalton on what he meant by that.
Not to defend him, but there's been times I quit a job, and I remember and I was older. It wasn't like, in your youth when you quit a job, because those are always different. It was when I was an adult, and God, what do you mean you want to leave? We're paying you, X, Y, and Z, and you just, it's like, whoa, dude. I'm not living your life. I'm living my life. I'm making decisions for me. So there has been a time for me when an employer was shocked that someone said no to him.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even close to as wealthy or successful as Joe Lacob is. So I'm not defending him, but I can understand where he would be miffed, because I don't think he's been told no too many times in his life recently.
I mean, there was a lot there. It was about the group decision making. Joe Lacob saying that he didn't find out until the morning that Bob Myers was stepping late, which I do believe. I do believe Bob Myers kept it close to the vest.
But I also believe that Lacob, there was a layer of denial. And again, going back to
he didn't think that he was really walking away.
Exactly.
All that money in the team and the organization, how much they're worth, the stadium, everything about the Golden State Warriors, Joe Lacob was stunned. And I do believe that he didn't find out until that morning. I do believe that. Let's go to Dalton Johnson, of course, NBC Sports Bay Area. What up, DJ? Petaluma's finest. He was at the presser on Monday. And I guess let's just start here, Dalton, and we appreciate you joining us today as we rehashed that Myers presser. What was the biggest takeaway you had from that press conference on Monday?
Yeah, I just think it's pretty interesting to kind of see Bob Myers' body language, Joe Lacob's body language, just kind of listen to what you guys were saying a little bit as far as a little bit of a sense of denial from Joe Lacob. I do agree with that, because like Shasky was just saying, I mean, I don't think Joe has been denied too much or told no too much, especially when we're talking about big money like that. Bob Myers made it pretty clear that this wasn't about money, that he just needed to step away. It wasn't the right time for him. And I think if we're going to be completely honest, look, I want to have a good relationship with Joe Lacob, with Kent, Kirk, any of the Lacobs. But I also believe that we need to be real and understand that the guy sitting next to Bob Myers also played a factor in Bob Myers wanting to take a step back as well. Look, I mean, he kind of joked about the 5 to 20 phone calls,
right,
working him until the NBA draft, and I mean, I believe all those words too. That the 5 to 20 phone calls is not. I can tell you this right now: the 5 to 20 phone calls is not an exaggeration. They do come at wild times. Joe Lacob is someone that Warriors fans have to be extremely happy about as an owner, someone that's willing to pay up and really, really cares about the team. At the same time, I can only imagine that it's a grueling job to work alongside him and meet his demands for more than a decade.
I hear everything you're saying there. How unique is that just to Joe Lacob, though? Like, and when you contrast some of the other owners, I'm not saying every situation is like that, but the high-level ones that are a little more hands-on like that, it feels like they're all wired that way, no?
No, I agree with that, and that's what I'm saying as far as kind of the give and take right there, right? Where Warriors fans have to be extremely happy that they have an owner like that cares, that is willing to put the money up. I mean, one of the takeaways is from the press conference is the fact that you asked Joe Lacob about the CBA and spending and feeling a need to win with Steph Curry here and the rest of the core. And the guy just goes, we're going to win no matter what. I don't care what the rules are, whether it's Steph here, whether it's somebody else here in the future, we're going to win. And he was, really showing that competitive side of him, which, to be honest with you, I loved it. It's fun to hear, and it's true to who he is. He's not hiding from that by any means. And I do believe that Bob Myers stepping down is only gonna bring more of that competitive spirit from Joe Lacob. And he doesn't want Bob Myers' his exit to be quote unquote the demise of Joe Lacob of the Warriors. Yeah, this is the first domino to fall of this core of these pillars of the Warriors. And Joe Lacob is going to do what he can to make sure that the Warriors are still on track to be contenders year in and year out.
There's many factors, and I don't know the size of each of the factors, but there's many factors, and let's acknowledge that. But don't you think at the root of a lot of issues on this team is just the young guys, like centered, the discussion, the discourse, the fit, everything revolving around the young guys?
How so? Do you mean just roster-wise? Do you mean Bob Myers-wise?
It puts stress on, playtime. It puts stress on the veterans. It puts stress on the win now versus development. It puts stress on the owner versus the GM in terms of who you're selecting very young, how much you're playing them. Just that was one of the more stressful aspects of the organization this year.
No doubt, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't argue with that, by any means. And I think that it was just such a constant conversation and talking point, and it was clear on the court. It was clear off the court as we could see, and trying to see what the direction of this team is. And it felt like for so long we knew what the direction of this team was. It was such veteran built. Even the season prior, having guys that kind of grinded through the league with Juan Toscano Andersons and Damian Lees and veteran laden players. So, of course, I think that was a big-time factor. And you just look at even kind of the two teams that are in the NBA Finals right now and how they were built. And it's different than what the Warriors were dealing with this year, especially specifically. And that, I think, was definitely a cloud that didn't go away by any means. It was hanging there, and at times it felt darker for sure. And it's something that they have to figure out a resolve of going forward, or else they're going to be still kind of stuck in this what are we, who are we mode that they never were before, and they really shouldn't be.
Dalton Johnson here on the Morning Rush on 95.7 The Game. Does a great job for NBC Sports Bay Area. Glad to call him a teammate. Petaluma's finest. Does a great job covering the Golden State Warriors. Were you a little stunned that Joe Lacob mentioned that, hey, I didn't find out until this morning that Bob Myers was stepping away? Did you believe that, or were you stunned by that? What did you think of that, DJ?
I was a little stunned by that. I think part of me believes it. I go back to kind of that denial with it, too, that I just think that Joe always believed, hey, we're going to be able to figure this out. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm going to be able to throw him the money. We heard about some of the ownership stake in that too. And so you figure that he's used to kind of making these things happen, whether how long it's going to take, whether how much money it takes. He's been pretty good with that as far as closing the deals and getting the guys he wants. And Bob Myers is a guy that he wanted. He wanted him to stay, no doubt about it. So I was pretty shocked to hear that. I think that, he had an idea that it could happen for a while, that he was trying to work through it for a while, obviously. And I think in the end, he just thought it was going to work out in his favor. And Bob Myers has kind of made a decision that finally was just his decision and for himself, because he's been doing so much work for everybody else for so long. I think he finally, just at 48 years old, was
Right.
this is his decision and his decision only.
Yeah, I do believe Bob Myers is going to be back sooner rather than later in the sport of basketball. No doubt. He mentioned that Monday that he's a basketball
Does
lifer.
anyone think he's not coming back?
I don't. I think. Yeah, I don't think.
You know what
so.
I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I think we all get that.
so.
Keep going. My bad.
Yeah. No, I don't think so at all. But Bonnie Williams yesterday signed a 6-year, $78.2 million deal with the Detroit Pistons. Has a chance to get up to $100 million. We all know Steve Kerr has 1 year left on the deal. And early on in the negotiations with Bob Myers and the Golden State Warriors, money was an issue. Maybe it didn't meet the demands of Bob Myers. Maybe he felt he got lowballed. And then, by the way, you know what? I'm burnt out anyway. Let's just call it quits. Steve Kerr, what is he going to demand? And what is Joe Lacob willing to pony up for Steve Kerr, who at times struggled? And you know Joe Lacob loves his young guys, DJ. He loves Kuminga. He loved Wiseman. He loves Moody. Is Joe Lacob, you think, willing to pay Steve Kerr a contract like Monty Williams got paid yesterday?
Well, Steve Kerr better be pulling out his best Tom Cruise impression with 4 words of "show me the money," because again, after that contract I see from Monty Williams, we know that Steve Kerr is definitely seeing that and going, "Okay, is this the bar right now? Well, is this the precedent that's going to be going forward?" But at the same time, I also want to take a few steps back as far as I just don't see Steve as someone who, even as a Greg Popovich disciple, a Phil Jackson disciple, as someone who sees himself coaching for 20, 25 years by any means. So it'll be fascinating to see going forward, especially with where Steph is in his career, where Clay is, where Draymond is, the kind of person that Steve Kerr is and the kind of interest that he has as well. He's just like Bob Myers. Steve Kerr also basketball lifer. I don't think that they're always going to have their love for the game, but they're also just not these people who are locked into a box by any means at the same time. You know what I'm saying there? So that's why, I just don't know how long we're going to see Steve Kerr coaching on the sidelines. That this isn't me giving an inkling that this is his last season by any means, but I don't know if he's going to go year by year, if he's going to sign a shorter deal after this next year. I just don't see him being someone who's coaching for 20 years in the NBA. I just see him having other interests as well, whether it's within basketball, outside of basketball. He's also a basketball lifer, like I said, but I just don't see him being a Popovich guy by any means.
Boy, I mean, just hearing everybody talk, it does feel like they're in a crazy transition period right now.
We're at the crossroads.
Man, there's a lot going on here. Dalton, what are you looking for? What's a characteristic that you think is the most important for the potential GM, no matter if it's an internal hire or an outside hire?
That's a great question. Really, it really is because you just used that word crossroads, and I think that the most likely is that it's going to be internal. I would be very surprised if the actual GM isn't Mike Dunleavy Jr. It would be surprising to me. I see it being internal. We know that the buzzword for the Warriors is always continuity. And when they have to figure out, obviously, the big three in Steph, Clay, and Draymond, but also we know that they have to figure out just internal continuity with the young guys, if they're all there and everything, too. So you would kind of assume that this internal voice is going to be there. But at the same time, I'm really wondering more if an outside voice or anything like that is going to be strongly considered to not have a shakeup, but kind of just change things up a little bit. I'm trying to find the right wording for that because it'll be so interesting because, again, with that continuity where I expect that to be their main focus and to kind of keep this going. They don't want the train to derail by any means. So I think whoever it is, I think Steph's voice needs to be involved, and they need to figure out how to best serve the veterans and them, and what in this 2-3 year window is best for the Warriors.
How much power do you think this new GM will have with the Golden State Warriors? Will Joe Lacob or Kurt Lacob or whoever else is part of that infrastructure with the Lacobs, will they have the most power now? Will they be the head honchos when it comes to these decisions? How much power or decision-making power will this new GM have, you think?
Yeah, it's almost like Joe Lacob was trying to use a strength in numbers with the front office at that press conference, talking about bench power and kind of trying to make jokes as far as, I know you guys didn't always like our bench this year, but we feel like we have a great bench in the front office, and it feels like he's really trying to kind of get on that collaborative kind of feeling going forward within the front office, and whether that means he has more say, whether it means Kirk has more say, we'll see. But I definitely think that there's going to be a lot of voices in the room, and that's why I see it being more internal, and not so much that the Lacobs can have more power, because their voices are already in there. Joe is not an owner who steps back, as you guys know. So I think it's going to be very collaborative in the decision making, and Joe, Kirk, they're going to have their fingerprints in what's next for the Warriors as well.
Do you want Draymond Green back on this team?
I do. Yeah, I do. And again, I go back to, I think that if Steph Curry could pick any teammate to go forward with, I think Draymond is at the very top of that list. And I'm talking about Warriors, outside of Warriors, anything. And that's what it comes down to. I fully understand the downside to that. I understand as far as on court with fit with certain lineups as well, and also off court. We know what it did this season.
Well, Dalton, knowing that, and I don't mean to interrupt you.
No. Go for it.
Does Poole and him, like, I just can't see them coexisting together next year. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misreading it. Maybe I'm underestimating time healing the wounds. I feel it very unlikely both of those guys are back this year. Am I wrong to feel that way?
Yeah, I've been trying to really kind of, I think, digest it more, because it's so clear that it just didn't get better. It didn't. They remain locker mates, but at the same time, it's not like they were in there joking and laughing by any means, and it wasn't shunned at the same time. But we went from a year before with Draymond Green being 10 years older than Jordan Poole, calling him his big brother, pushing for him to be the most improved player. And now everything that each one of them says is it's business, it's basketball. That's not teammates. That's not brothers. Yeah. That's not this championship culture that we've heard about with the Warriors for so long. So again, I don't know what it's going to take, but there kind of has to be a deadline almost as far as, is this resolved or not before the season? And if it's not, they're going to have to move on one way or the other with one player or the other, because it can't be what it was from the start this next season if they actually believe that they have championship aspirations. Because, again, they were swimming upstream from the very start, and we all know why. And so there has to be kind of some point, maybe this summer, or I really do think it has to be this summer, where whether they sit down with the two of them, or just the two of them sit down by themselves and they figure out, is this going to work or not? And they just have to have an actual reality check, because right now, you're right. It didn't work, and most likely it's not working right now. So they have to be able to figure out, it's priority number one this offseason, hands down in my eyes.
Wow. Fascinating offseason ahead for the Golden State Warriors. It's already started with Bob Myers stepping down. Just got a report from Front Office Sports that ESPN is pursuing Bob Myers for their NBA coverage. So we may be seeing him on television at least for next season, and I think he'll be back in basketball within the next 3 years. Dalton, good stuff, man. We'll continue to follow your work this offseason. A very fascinating one for the Golden State Warriors.
Appreciate you guys.
Anytime. Petaluma's finest, Dalton Johnson, here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game.